Forced to marry a servant, she faced a fate. But what happened next shocked the whole Wild West. The town of Red Hollow was small, dusty, and always quiet under the wide sky of the Wild West. The wind often carried sand across the wooden streets, and most people lived simple lives, working hard just to survive. Everyone knew everyone, and secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. But even in a place like this, some stories were too big to ignore. The Harrington family was the richest and most powerful family in Red Hollow. They owned large pieces of land, controlled trade in the town, and were respected by most people. Their big house stood on a small hill, watching over the town like a silent king. Inside that house lived Evelyn Harrington, the only daughter of the family. She was beautiful, educated, and strong-minded. People often said she had the pride of a queen. Evelyn believed she would marry someone powerful, someone from her own class, and live a life full of respect and comfort. But life in the Wild West was never stable. One bad business deal changed everything. The Harrington family lost a large amount of money after a failed land investment. Deals went wrong, partners left, and debt started growing quickly. The family that once stood strong began to fall into fear and pressure. For the first time, people in town started talking about the possibility of the Harringtons losing their power. Evelyn noticed the change in her home. Her father, Mr. Harrington, who once walked with confidence, now looked stressed and tired. He spent long hours in his office, speaking with lawyers and businessmen, trying to find a way out. One evening, Evelyn was called into her father's room. The air felt heavy. The lamp on the table gave a weak yellow light. Her father did not look at her at first. He stayed silent for a long moment, as if choosing words carefully. Then he finally spoke. "Evelyn," he said slowly, "we are in serious trouble." Evelyn listened quietly, but she did not understand what was coming next. Her father explained that the family was almost bankrupt. If they did not settle their debts soon, they could lose everything: the land, the house, and their name in the town. Evelyn felt shocked, but she still believed they would find another solution. But then her father said something she could never forget. "There is a way to save our family," he said. Evelyn looked at him confused. "What way?" she asked. Her father hesitated again. His voice dropped lower. "You must marry Jacob Miller." For a moment, Evelyn did not understand what she had heard. The name sounded familiar, but it carried no importance in her world. Jacob Miller was a servant in their house, someone who worked in the stables, taking care of horses and doing simple chores. Evelyn stepped back in disbelief. "Jacob, a servant," she said sharply. "You cannot be serious." Her father finally looked at her. His eyes showed pressure, fear, and desperation. "It is the only way," he replied. "This marriage will help us settle debts and protect our land. His agreement will save us." Evelyn felt her heart tighten. She could not believe what she was hearing. She had always imagined a future filled with respect, dignity, and status. And now she was being told to marry a man she barely even noticed in her daily life. She refused immediately. "No," she said firmly. "I will not marry him." But her father did not change his decision. The pressure from creditors, business threats, and loss had broken him. He believed this was the only way left. Days passed, but the decision did not change. Evelyn tried to resist. She argued, pleaded, and even locked herself in her room. But the situation outside kept getting worse. The family's reputation was falling fast, and time was running out. Finally, under pressure she could not escape, the wedding was arranged. There was no celebration, no joy, no guests from high society, only a small and silent ceremony in a simple church. The whole town was shocked when they heard the news. The daughter of the powerful Harrington family was marrying a servant. People whispered in streets, in shops, and in saloons. Some were surprised, some laughed, and others felt something strange about the situation. Evelyn stood at the altar in a plain white dress, her face cold and distant. She did not look at Jacob. She felt like she was trapped in a life that did not belong to her. Jacob Miller stood beside her, calm and silent. He wore simple clothes, but his expression was different from everyone else. He did not look nervous or confused. Instead, he looked steady, as if he understood something others did not. When the ceremony ended, the words were spoken. They were now husband and wife. Evelyn felt like her world had collapsed. As they stepped out of the church, the sun was bright over Red Hollow. The wind moved through the dusty streets. People stared as the unusual couple walked past them. Evelyn did not look at Jacob even once. But Jacob, walking beside her, stayed calm. As if this was not the beginning of something bad, but the beginning of something far bigger than anyone in Red Hollow could understand. After the wedding, Red Hollow could not stop talking about it. The news spread fast through every corner of the town. People in the saloons, shops, and streets kept repeating the same story. The richest family's daughter had married a servant. Some laughed, some felt pity, and some simply could not believe it. But inside the Harrington home, silence had taken over. Evelyn Harrington returned to the house she had grown up in, but everything now felt different. The same walls, the same furniture, the same windows, yet nothing felt familiar anymore. The biggest change was not the house itself, but the person living inside it with her. Jacob Miller, her so-called husband, was now part of her daily life. Evelyn refused to accept him as anything more than a servant. Even after the marriage, she kept her distance. She spoke to him only when necessary, and even then, her words were cold and sharp. She made it clear that in her heart, nothing had changed. Jacob, however, never argued. He stayed quiet and respectful. He continued his work around the house just like before. He helped in the stables, fixed small things in the home, and assisted the workers without complaint. He never demanded attention or respect. He simply lived his life calmly. This behavior confused Evelyn more than anything else. She expected anger. She expected complaints. She expected him to act proud or try to claim authority as her husband, but Jacob did none of that. Instead, he treated everyone with the same calm respect. Days turned into weeks. At first, Evelyn tried to ignore him completely. She would walk past him without a word. At meals, she would sit far away. In her mind, this marriage was nothing real. It was only a forced situation that would eventually end. But slowly, something strange began to happen. Jacob was not like the other workers she had known. He was quiet, but not weak. He listened carefully to everything around him. He noticed small details others ignored. When something was broken, he fixed it quickly and perfectly. When problems came up in the house, he solved them without creating noise or conflict. Even the other workers began to respect him more than they showed. Evelyn noticed this too, even though she did not want to. One evening, a storm passed through Red Hollow. Heavy wind hit the town, and rain fell strongly. A part of the Harrington stable roof broke, and the horses became frightened. Workers panicked, trying to control the situation. Evelyn stood near the window, watching everything with frustration. She expected chaos, but then she saw Jacob. He moved quickly but calmly. He did not shout or panic. He guided the workers, calmed the horses, and fixed the broken section with surprising skill. Within a short time, everything was under control again. No one was injured, no damage spread further. Evelyn watched silently from a distance. She could not understand how a simple servant could handle such a situation so easily. Another strange thing began to bother her. Sometimes when visitors came to the house, businessmen, traders, or even officials, their behavior changed when Jacob was around. They would speak differently, more carefully. Some of them even showed quiet respect toward him, which made no sense to Evelyn. She started questioning things in her mind, but she never asked him directly. Pride stopped her. In her heart, she still believed she was above him in every way. She reminded herself that he was just a servant, no matter what others thought. But her curiosity kept growing. Jacob, on the other hand, never tried to explain himself. He never forced conversation. He never tried to enter her world. He lived like a shadow in the same house, present, but unnoticed unless needed. One night, Evelyn could not sleep. The house was quiet, and the wind outside was soft. She walked slowly through the hallway, thinking about everything that had happened since the marriage. Her mind kept returning to Jacob, his calm behavior, his skills, and the strange respect people showed him. As she passed the main hall, she saw him sitting alone near the fireplace. He was not sleeping. He was simply sitting there, looking into the fire as if lost in thought. The firelight reflected softly on his face. For a moment, Evelyn stopped walking. She studied him carefully from a distance. Something about him felt different, something she could not understand. He did not look like someone who belonged to her world, yet he was now part of her life. Jacob suddenly looked up. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Evelyn quickly turned away and walked back to her room, her heart beating faster for reasons she did not understand. That night, for the first time, she could not stop thinking about him. And far away in Red Hollow, the storm clouds slowly disappeared. But something inside the Harrington house had already begun to change. Quietly, and without anyone realizing it yet. The days in Red Hollow continued as usual, but inside the Harrington house, something was slowly changing. Evelyn Harrington could no longer ignore the strange feeling growing in her mind. The man she once thought was nothing more than a servant was becoming harder to understand. Jacob Miller still lived quietly, doing his work without asking for attention. But now, Evelyn noticed things she had never paid attention to before. People in town looked at him differently. Some greeted him with unusual respect. Others lowered their voices when he was near. Evelyn tried to convince herself it meant nothing, yet her curiosity kept growing stronger every day. One morning, the calm of Red Hollow was broken. Three powerful businessmen arrived in town. They were known for controlling trade routes and land deals across several regions of the West. They wore fine clothes, rode expensive horses, and carried themselves with confidence. Their arrival immediately created tension. They called a meeting with Mr. Harrington, Evelyn's father. The meeting was held in the Harrington office, a large wooden room filled with maps, papers, and records of land ownership. Evelyn was not invited, but she stayed close, sensing something important was about to happen. Inside the room, the businessmen spoke firmly. They demanded control over a large portion of Harrington land. They claimed legal rights and presented documents that seemed difficult to challenge. Mr. Harrington looked pale. He studied the papers again and again, but he knew the truth. His family was already weak from debt. If he refused, they could lose everything in court or worse. For the first time in years, he looked completely helpless. Outside the room, Evelyn felt her heart tighten. She had never seen her father like this before. The situation seemed hopeless. But then something unexpected happened. The door opened slowly. Jacob Miller walked inside. The room became silent immediately. The businessmen turned to look at him with confusion and slight irritation. To them, he was just a servant, someone who did not belong in such discussions. One of the businessmen spoke sharply. "This is not your place. Leave." But Jacob did not move. He stood calmly near the door, his expression steady and controlled. There was no fear in his face, no hesitation. "I think I should stay," Jacob said in a calm voice. Mr. Harrington looked shocked. He was about to stop him, but something in Jacob's tone made him pause. Jacob walked forward slowly and looked at the documents on the table. He studied them carefully for a few seconds. The room remained silent. Only the sound of distant wind outside could be heard. Then Jacob spoke. "These documents are incomplete," he said. "There are missing signatures here, and this land boundary does not match official records." The businessmen exchanged quick looks. Jacob continued, pointing at small details in the papers. "This agreement was not registered properly. It cannot be used as legal ownership." The room grew tense. Evelyn, still watching from outside, could not believe what she was hearing. Jacob was not guessing. He was speaking with clear knowledge, like someone who understood law and land records deeply. The businessmen tried to argue, but Jacob remained calm. He pointed out every mistake in their claim one by one. His voice stayed steady, never raising, never shaking. Within minutes, the confidence of the powerful men began to break. One of them finally stood up angrily, but even his anger felt weak compared to Jacob's calm control. "This is nonsense," he said, but his voice lacked strength. Jacob looked at him directly. "It is not nonsense," Jacob replied. "It is the truth." Silence filled the room again. After a long moment, the businessmen realized they had lost control of the situation. Their documents were no longer strong. Their claim was no longer safe. One by one, they began to leave the room. No argument, no victory, just quiet defeat. Outside, Evelyn stood frozen. She had seen everything. The men who once came with power and confidence had been forced to step back by a man she believed was only a servant. Inside the room, Jacob turned toward Mr. Harrington. "I believe this matter is settled," he said simply. Mr. Harrington could not speak. He only nodded slowly, still trying to understand what had just happened. The businessmen left the house in silence, their footsteps fading into the dusty street outside. When everything became quiet again, Jacob walked out of the office. He passed by Evelyn without saying a word, but Evelyn did not move. Her mind was full of questions. Her heart was racing. The image of Jacob standing in that room kept repeating in her thoughts. She realized something she could no longer deny. Jacob Miller was not who she thought he was. And somewhere deep inside the mystery of his past, there was a truth far bigger than anything Red Hollow had ever seen. The events in the Harrington house had changed everything in Red Hollow. The town, which once only whispered about a forced marriage between a rich girl and a servant, now had a different kind of silence. People no longer laughed about it the same way. Instead, they started wondering who Jacob Miller really was. Inside the Harrington home, Evelyn Harrington could not sleep peacefully anymore. Her mind kept returning to that day in the office. The calm way Jacob spoke, the confidence in his voice, the respect even powerful businessmen had shown him before leaving in defeat. Nothing made sense to her anymore. She had spent her whole life believing in class, status, and pride. In her world, a servant was someone who followed orders, stayed quiet, and lived in the background. But Jacob was different. He never acted like someone who belonged at the bottom of society, yet he also never tried to prove anything. This confusion slowly turned into curiosity, and something deeper she did not fully understand. The next morning, Evelyn decided to find answers. She walked through the house and finally found Jacob outside near the stables. He was repairing a wooden fence that had broken during the recent storm. The morning sun was soft, and dust floated gently in the air. Evelyn stood at a distance for a moment before speaking. "You are not just a servant," she said slowly. Jacob stopped working but did not turn immediately. After a short pause, he looked at her calmly. "I never said I was," he replied in a simple voice. Evelyn felt a strange pressure in her chest. "Then who are you?" she asked. Her voice was quieter now, less sharp than before. Jacob looked back at the fence for a moment, then at the open land beyond the house. "I was someone who once worked with powerful men," he said. "I helped build land agreements, solved disputes, and managed property records for important families across the West." Evelyn listened carefully, her eyes widening slightly. "But I left that life," Jacob continued. "I refused to be part of corruption, so I disappeared from that world and lived quietly." Evelyn felt shocked. All this time, she had thought he was a simple servant, but the truth was completely different. She took a step closer. "And the marriage?" she asked. "Was that also part of your plan?" Jacob stayed silent for a moment. The wind moved slowly around them. Then he answered honestly. "I agreed to it because I knew your family was in danger," he said. "There were people trying to take advantage of your father's situation. I wanted to protect this house without revealing myself." Evelyn felt her mind freeze for a second. Everything she believed was turning upside down. "So, this marriage was not forced on you?" she asked softly. Jacob shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "It was my choice." Evelyn stepped back slowly. She did not know what to feel. Anger, confusion, and something else she could not name all mixed inside her. For the first time, she looked at Jacob not as a servant, but as a man with a hidden past, a strong mind, and a purpose she never understood. Days passed after that conversation. Evelyn changed slowly. She no longer treated Jacob with the same coldness. She still struggled with her pride, but she started noticing his actions differently. The way he helped people without asking for credit. The way he stayed calm even in difficult situations. The way he never used his position to control others. The town of Red Hollow also began to change its opinion. People started respecting Jacob openly now. Some even came to him for advice. The same man who was once seen as just a servant was now quietly known as someone who protected the Harrington name and saved important land deals from collapse. But Jacob never showed pride. He remained the same, quiet, calm, and distant from attention. One evening, Evelyn found him sitting outside again. The sky was turning orange as the sun set behind the hills. The town was quiet. She stood beside him, not saying anything at first. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Why did you stay here, even after everything?" she asked. Jacob looked at the horizon. "Because sometimes," he said slowly, "the place where you are needed is not the place where you are respected." Evelyn did not respond. Those words stayed in her mind deeply. In that moment, she realized something important. The marriage she once called a punishment had actually saved her family. The man she once rejected had been protecting her all along, and the life she thought was ruined had slowly become something she could not understand but could no longer ignore. As night slowly covered Red Hollow, the wind moved through the town again. But this time, it felt different. Because the truth had come out. And with it, a new fate had already begun for Evelyn Harrington and Jacob Miller, one that no one in the Wild West had ever expected.